What's up, everyone? Welcome to the 96th episode of the Balanced Business Podcast. We got Justine, Larissa, and Nico here. Team, how are we feeling today?
Feeling great. Is everybody hydrated? I
No.
guess this isn't really water, but
It's
water.
a good reminder.
Everybody drink some water.
Especially in the winter, you forget. So, we should have a hydration podcast. And you're like, hey, this is hydration hour.
Just your daily reminder to drink some water.
But with that being said, Justine, what are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to talk about some tips for improving customer relationships and how you can stay in touch with your customers, especially as like a home service professional / landscaper in the off season. So it can be really easy to like not talk to your customers for a few months when it's winter and you're not seeing them for landscaping maintenance and stuff like that. So we're just going to go over some ways that you can improve those relationships during the off season. So let's start us off.
And I think like the best thing to do is to start with, like why this matters. Because like ultimately, like you're in business and this is not a feel good podcast. This is the Balanced Business Podcast, right? So this like how does this relate to you on a business standpoint, right? Some of the best people in your network are probably current / past customers. One, they already have worked with you and probably have a good experience with you. And even if they didn't, there's a way to establish that. But it is so much easier to sell these people than it is anyone who's cold. Because there's a lot of people out there, especially in the landscaping niche, that this might be their second year or third year. If you already work with them, you've probably proven out your work ethic, how you communicate, all that. You've already done that. And they probably expect that. And it's easier to go with someone that you've already worked with than someone brand new, right? The cost to transition, both in money and time and stress, is pretty big. The second thing is this could be one of the best marketing channels that you just might not be tapping into. A lot of people live and die by referrals, but very few people actually have a systematic way to nurture past customers, people that have been in their network, and turning them into like referral machines, right? And when I say referral machines, no, they're humans, but it's a way for both you and them to benefit from a relationship rather than it being fully transactional. So this matters because you get more customers for cheaper that convert more. That's why we talk about customer service, more repeat buyers, all that fun stuff. So we can go ahead and kick it in, but that's why this matters.
And I mean, I feel like the easiest way to improve relationships with your customers, it's going to sound a little simplistic, but communicate with them regularly. That's kind of like the core of it is like if you are staying what we like to call top of mind, meaning you're reaching out, you're checking in. It could even be something as simple as saying, oh, hey, I saw this like funny meme and it made me think of you. I mean, think of them as like you're building relationships with them, you're building friendships with them. You are, really continuing to keep that relationship alive. And I mean, people think about this from any perspective, from any type of relationship. The number one thing that is the killer is ghosting, is just being like, okay, see you in 7 months. And it's like, well, there's a lot of time between now and then that you can be utilizing just again to let them know you're thinking of them, let them know that like you haven't forgotten about them, that maybe there's new landscaping trends you think would look great in their yard, or you might be running a certain promotion, or maybe again you're just saying, hey, you're just checking in, saying hi, checking in, making sure they're all good. Seasonal tips, if you did things like softscapes, certain plants, if you know there's a big freeze coming up, sending out a message just to say, hey, if you have any fruiting trees or anything like that, make sure you're covering them. Anything like that just, again, might be helpful to receive from the point of view of like a customer that might make them think of you again and again and again. And then when their friend says, oh, I need an awesome landscaper, but I don't know who to go with, they say, oh, go with this guy. He's great. He stays in touch with me. I never have to wonder what's going on. I have no issues with communication. Those alone are huge selling points. And I wouldn't, I don't want to undersell them because I think it's so valuable.
No, absolutely. And the one thing I'll add to that is we do talk about communicating frequently, right? And we do have a podcast like what to do if it's raining out or if snows or the quiet time. And like I said, a lot of this can actually be done systematically, right? So you can have someone on your team do this. You can set up automations that remind them, right? You can send a message that's pretty generic that appeals to most people, but still means something that's custom to them, right? So like Larissa was saying, if there's a big freeze coming up, or let's say a tornado came through your area, or it just rained a little bit more than usual, or you're running a promotion, right? Letting these individuals know is a big thing. My biggest thing is we want to go with proven frameworks. So a great thing to do is when you sign up, and most of us have these, right? We sign up with a brand we really like. Let's say that it's I don't know, Target, or let's say that it's I don't know, JCPenney, or whatever that is. Like look at stores. Look how often they communicate with you, right? Like you might not read all of them, but they're sending you at least a couple times a week a message. And it might feel like it's overwhelming, but you're not seeing all the messaging. Your customers aren't going to see all the messaging, but they're continuously trying to be top of mind for you. And restaurants are a great example as well of doing that, right? Like look how often, when you sign up for a rewards program, how they're sending you buy one get one specials, or a free dessert with a purchase of something that's $50 or more, right? That's really not costing them anything. So there are frameworks and companies already doing this. Our job is to steal it, and if you need inspiration, those are great places to look for inspiration from.
Hmm. And to that point, I think when we talk about regular communication, because I think that's the most important part, keep in mind that can come in a lot of different formats. If it's somebody that you've connected with personally, that maybe you've done work for them, and that you have that prior line of communication already open, a text is a great way to do it. They have really high open rates. It's almost guaranteed to be seen, and pretty high response rates. If it's something that's maybe a little bit more casual, I guess you could say, or something that's a little bit more promotional, maybe you want to stick with email, depending on how those relationships are. So just keep in mind, like, there's a bunch of different ways you can stay top of mind, as well as, like, obviously through things like social media, any other way you might be connected with these people, you can be communicating with them regularly there, and just make sure you're tailoring that communication to the platform. If you send a text, that's going to be way different than an email. So just keep those things in mind. If you're sending out, text messages, they should be personal, they should be short, they should be, concise, to the point, conversational. If you're sending out emails, it's maybe a better format for typical promotions, for news, for updates, for things along those lines. So just kind of keep in mind the format that you use and the communication you use on each of those formats as well.
Yeah, social media, you mentioned that, but I just want to highlight that as a platform that you can use to stay in touch with your customers during the off season. It can be a great way to show off projects that you really enjoyed from the past season. Be like, hey, this is so and so's yard. Like, it turned out really well. And then just kind of show them off a little bit too, and encourage them to share pictures that they've taken, or parties that they've hosted in their new space, and just kind of create that community online between your customers. I think is a really unique way to keep those customer relationships alive.
Yeah, I think a good example people can look to for that particular way of keeping in touch with customers, and then also having them share your work with their network, is I love to look at like wedding photographers, for example. They do an amazing job of this, of they'll have their session, and then right away they'll post one or two photos and make sure to tag everybody in them, and then they'll drip out those photos over the next few months and make sure that every time they get retagged, like, I have people that I know that got married in like May, and they're still resharing from their wedding photographers pages like their wedding photos, and it's now November. So it's one of those things you can do to like have people consistently sharing your work, repeatedly sharing your work, is like sharing photos of what you've done for them and making sure to include them on that conversation, to make sure to tag them so that it's really easy for them to repost that or to reshare it. I mean, those are just really good ways that you can utilize social media, in addition to all the other ways you can utilize social media, but that's a good way you can utilize social media to have a very like public relationship with some of these people as well. And I mean, who doesn't like getting a good little shout out so that you can repost it to your Instagram story, Like, nothing better than that.
Absolutely.
And then now is also a good time in the off season to tell your customers, your existing customers, that you do offer winter services potentially, you know, and like communicate that with your customers, right?
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Anything you do for winterization or for hanging lights, or maybe even depending where you're at, obviously depends if the ground is frozen or not. Depending where you're at, maybe you can do extra hardscapes, extra lighting, extra anything like that that you focus on specifically in the winter. That winter's a good time to do it. Maybe it's a good time to do tree cutting because there aren't as many leaves in the way, you know. There's a lot of really good opportunities that you can utilize that if you're having that regular communication, if you're maintaining those customer relationships, it's just so much easier
Yeah.
to get those, again, already warm leads, already people that know your work, already people that trust you, already people, again, that you have an open line of communication with. It's so much easier to get those people to convert than somebody that's totally brand new.
Is there anything else that we missed or any other tips we want to give before we end it off?
This is something that we've seen done all over the place, which is you get inspired by podcasts like this and you go do it and you see some type of results, most likely. Then the next thing you do, you see less and a result, and then you might jump to the conclusion that this doesn't work anymore. My biggest thing is when dealing with people, especially customers or individuals, there, and we talk about a lot on this podcast, there's data, right? So like just because it went well or didn't go well the first time, our recommendation is make this a sustainable part of your business. So rather than trying to do 5 or 10, of these messages and outreaches and all that, in December, and you don't do it for the rest of the year, that will produce less results for you than if you just spaced it out and did like one touch point once a month for a year, right? And it doesn't, obviously you're going to get better results if you personalize it, but even if you just do like a, appreciation post or a greetings or referral program shout out or something like that, you do it once a month, like do something that's sustainable rather than try to front load as much as you can and honestly doing yourself and your customers a disservice. So that's just something to keep in mind is, one, you want to make it sustainable. So.
Hmm. And to that point as well, I mean, what you don't want to do is you don't want every time you talk to somebody that you're trying to sell them something.
Yeah.
That will immediately turn them off of the idea of, consistently maybe purchasing into some of those packages that you might be promoting. But if you're offering things consistently along the lines of educational content, tips, personalized, again, just greetings, saying, hey, just was thinking of you, hope you're having a great day, and anything you can do to make the connections and the relationships feel a little bit more genuine and slightly less transactional. Because it's one thing, and I'll use Nika's JCPenney example. If I'm seeing something from JCPenney, I know they're trying to get me to buy stuff. Like that's regardless of the situation. Now, obviously, that's a case where like that particular company and that particular brand cannot maintain personal relationships with all of their customers and clients. However, as a landscaper in a local market, it's so valuable to do this, again, because so much of what this work is through referrals, is through word of mouth, is through all these other things that are just so valuable. So that's why I guess I would say, like, as you're maintaining this customer relationship, don't think of every single communication to have a sales option in there. Some of those communications should just be checking in, should just be saying, hey, should just be saying, oh, here's some educational content for you, or here's some tips on the season, or, things they can use that are actionable but don't require any give from them, or again, just a little appreciation. Everybody likes to feel appreciated. Everybody likes to feel noticed. So doing things like sharing that on your social media or shouting them out and just saying, hey, I really appreciated this aspect of our interaction. Like, thank you so much for that. Things like that just go such a long way. And I would just really encourage people to not downplay those aspects as you're thinking about a customer communication strategy.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. Well, guys, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. We really appreciate it. And again, like if you have any questions, email me at nico@balancedmedia.com. Team, thank you guys so much for all the work that you put in, Justine, especially for all the preparation and staying hydrated. And if there's no other questions then or comments, then we'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace.